mute the volume. Grand Rising,
Well,
everyone. Grand Rising, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Give me a second as I cut the music on. So I'm going to be adjusting the volumes so that it's not so overpowering.
Dudavision said they lived and they studied amongst
yeah, I'm checking it myself on
Yes,
this
we
end.
did. For what, 200 years of studying?
at least.
I'm here.
Alright, hold on. What is that that's playing? Oh, that's history and review.
Yeah, I'm hitting the button to switch it right now. Give me 2 minutes.
I was like, I'm not supposed to be hearing me in my ear. So while you doing that, I'll go ahead and greet everybody. Grand Rising, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great Wednesday rising. Hopefully you got your hard hats on. This is going to be a doozy. It's going to be a doozy.
Yeah, that was in my head as well. Proper term for this.
So, well, welcome back. No sellout. Glad you and the relatives made it back safely. Good to hear your voice.
Appreciate it. Glad to be back. And I am back.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know.
Really. That was basically for everybody that was. Never mind.
Did you miss me? Mic check. Can everybody hear me? Mic check, mic check. 2 2 1 2.
Yes, put the ones in the chat if you could hear us.
Peace, Pamela Hall. Peace, relative. Peace, Carrie. What's up? What's up? You don't want it, made it. Peace. Alpha Jones. Peace. 757. What up, Copper? Who I miss? I miss somebody.
Copper Color Queen, Grand Rising.
Copper Color Queen. Peace. I'm gonna say that.
Huh? You may have.
Jeffrey Gordon, did I say that?
No.
Peace. Okay, Jeffrey Gordon, peace. Why am I skipping stuff?
Trying to get back in the flow of things. It's all good. Grand Rising to the new subscribers. Grand Rising to those that choose to just listen, get the information, and help their community. And private. Again, like I said, we hope everyone's having a great rising. And looking forward to bringing you this information. And let's see. Of course, before we get started, we will be doing a public service announcement. Want to make sure we got the levels right. We will be bringing in the background music very shortly.
Audio ready.
Oh, okay, cool. See, that's what's up. That's what I'm talking about. Look. He ready, now I ain't ready. See how that works?
Wait a minute. You shouldn't have said nothing.
I know, right? There we go. And for those in the chat that don't know, because most of the stuff is done in the background, the only person that can hear this music that you guys, ladies and gentlemen, hear is me. So don't sell out bones. Anybody that comes on the panel, they can't hear the music. So that's gonna be the next thing that we do.
We don't get to enjoy it. Yes, this is what he's saying.
Make sure that. Hey man,
headphones and all this, and
I'm working with limited technology here.
It's all right.
So the goal.
I can hear y'all. That's good enough. I hear y'all. I'm not on mute in my ears, so.
Exactly.
Plus, I can listen to it. Well, I wouldn't listen to it twice, but I just, the intro and the outro is where I'm ready. David Corey, where he at? 'Cause I know he knows what I'm talking about.
David Corey normally is normally here by now, and also El Boria. They normally like 1 and 2.
I know he probably just, as soon as the show over with, let me go put my headphone on. Let me go plug it up in the car. Blow the windows What you listening to, Cab?
Well, also too, let me go ahead and thank the new subscribers from yesterday to the forum.
Oh yeah.
Hold on. Because we had some people subscribe after the show, and we were conversing. Is that proper? Conversing, having a conversation.
That is proper.
Okay, just checking.
Just don't say conversate for a few. I think you got everybody saying it wrong.
So one of the give a shout out to Macedon 1 and El Boria for subscribing to the Attention Assembly forum yesterday, so we were able to answer some questions, for lack of a better term, a build after the build, and we're in the process of making sure this forum is for the chat, so everyone has a place to go and share information and build after this information is exposed, because there's a lot of it. We have all the links in the forum from what we discussed, and for those of you who've actually done some research and there's some things that you want to input or talk about, further discuss, or ask questions about, or give us something to think about, this forum is a perfect place to do it, because as you know, we don't control YouTube or have any control of the Hangouts. So they're going to be removing those anyway. So we're going to be needing to remove all of our intellectual property from those Hangouts to our forum. And we wanted to give the chat a place to share, build, grow, expose, and also share information on their genealogy. Because as you grow, we grow. So that's one of the things we wanted to make sure we have. And we're also going to be adding to, let me state that correctly. We won't be adding it, but Bones will be adding a forum to where we'll be able to communicate visually and through audio, just like a Hangouts or a conference call. So that's going to be the next feature that gets added to the forum. So individual and group chats, or individuals can be able to communicate one-on-one like they do in Hangouts. So stay tuned for that. So let's go ahead and get started with these public service announcements. And this episode,
Peace, Enrique.
Grand Rising, Enrique. Glad you was able to make it. This episode of Cab Grand Rising Show is brought to you by Talkless Assembly, where the real work gets done. And as you know, Talkless Assembly is a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising up indigenous Americans' voices by using genealogy, also known as family history, which is the study of families and the tracing of their lineage and history. Genealogists use oral interviews, historical records, genetic analysis, and other records to obtain information about a family and to demonstrate kinship and pedigrees of its members. Now, our core values are the foundation of our company and essential to our success, and serve as a lens through which we evaluate every business decision. Those core values are, but are not limited to, integrity, which is know and do what is right. Respect, which is treating others the way you want to be treated. Responsibility, which is embrace opportunities to contribute. And servant leadership, which is serve the common good. And at the Talkless Assembly, we always like to remind the chat, those that are aware of who we are and what we're about, and even those that are new, and this is your first time listening. The Talkless Assembly is here to help you with your genealogy. We are not here to tell you what tribe you belong to. We're not here to tell you what tribe you don't belong to. We're not here to tell you who you are. We're not here to get into your personal business. That's not what we're here for. We're here to give you information and help you, if you so choose, to tie into your tribe. Not saying that you have to tie into your tribe. If you also want to become self-sufficient and financially independent, we will extend all of our resources and our information to you free of charge. And if you also want to do this to not only help yourself, but your family, your community, and even your tribe, we would do that as well. The best way to reach us, to have those things done, and to get a conversation started would be to reach us at autochthonousassembly.com/forum, or you can send us an email at autochthonousassembly@gmail.com. So that's what I have for that. No sellout. Is there anything that I missed or that needs to be added? It needs to be stated.
Nope. You got it. You got a question on the chat also?
Okay, Enrique says, hey, TMH, before you go in, how did you get around that missing great-grandfather of yours that's missing on the death certificate? I'm dealing with that same thing. Oh, that's a great question. Wow, y'all do be paying attention. For me, hey, man.
Why wouldn't they?
Man, sometimes I wonder.
Time, man.
Anyway, great question, Enrique. I was fortunate from the fact of knowing that because it's my grandmother's father, which is on my father's side. So she has lots of brothers and sisters. And because she had lots of brothers and sisters, I made sure I put those brothers and sisters in there. If some of the birth dates, I knew almost all the birth dates, and I knew some of the death dates. And also too, because we're using Ancestry.com, and we can also help you guys if you don't have an Ancestry account, connect, and you can just use our account free of charge. So I was able to tie into another relative's family tree that already had not only her mother, my second generation grandmother, but my second generation grandfather based off of the family tree. So that's how I was able to get around that. So I still didn't find my great grandfather, but I was able to work around him. Now, as I start freeing up time and going through vital statistics and things of that nature, I may find them, then again, I might not. But that didn't stop me from, like most of you, continuing to do the work and just work around it until I can get back to it and go to, vital statistics in North Carolina, South Carolina. So I don't know if that helps, but that's one of the things that I was able to do. What you'll find is as you start working on your tree in other areas, especially on Ancestry, what you'll find is there'll be leaves that pop up in other trees. Because you figure every time you go a generation back with your grandparents, it doubles that number. So you go from 2 to 4 to 8 to 16. So you're dealing with 16 grandparents. If you get stuck on one, the suggestion, Grand Rising David Corey, the suggestion, Enrique, is always, this is for anybody, if you get stuck, don't get frustrated. Go to another limb of the tree and work there. And what you'll find is by the time you work your way back to the limb that you were stuck on, you will have found some information would have popped up. That information is also located on autochthonousassembly.com's website under genealogy. And there are tips and tricks of how to get that information, and there are also videos that Bones put together of how to do searches. Hopefully you were able to look that information up on Enrique. If not, you can go to AutonomousAssembly.com's website and also the YouTube page and get that information, because there's a lot of great information out there that Bones put in the work for to make sure that we don't have to do too much looking, or makes the search easier. So, Grand Rising Golden Moon, hope all is well. So, hopefully I answered that question.
Yeah, and just to touch a little bit more on something that y'all mentioned. When it comes to the uncles and aunties, make sure to fill as many of them in as possible, because a lot of times the sisters and brothers will tie you into these relatives that you can't find. Just touching in on a little more what our teammate said. Sometimes we spend a lot of time just worrying about the grandparents, not realizing that they had siblings. And by putting in their information, that helps, it ties it together a lot better. Just a quick reminder.
Exactly. So, man. Whew. The reason why the pause, ladies and gentlemen of the chat, is we were building last night about this conversation that we're going to bring with you today. And when I say James, aka Doodle Vision, aka Choctaw Jimmy, aka James Flame, dropped some information on us, he did the thing. And along with the information that Bones tied in, I am honored and happy to say I work with these individuals, along with No Sellout's timely comments, which I'm encouraging him. So chat, we need to encourage No Sellout to speak more, because his perspective is just as important as everybody else's. He's like that glue for us. So we need to hear his voice more. So encourage him, because he'll get ghosted in a minute. But anyway, with that being said, the whole Slav, slave, Black Dutch, emancipation, that is what's the best way to put that, Bones? From what we discovered, from what you discovered, and then what Doodle Vision shared with us yesterday.
A mess?
He said Amish or a mess?
No, he said a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Not Amish.
All right.
Okay. And the reason why he said it's a mess is by a show of ones in the chat. How many of you actually have ever read the Emancipation Proclamation? I mean, looked at it. Give me a one if you've actually looked, and I don't mean the original document, of course. I mean actually had the opportunity to read a duplicate of it. Because yesterday was the first time, because I went to the National Archives and looked it up. That was actually the first time that I've ever read it. And I don't know why I thought it was going to read something more than what it read. But I must say that I was quite underwhelmed, if that makes sense. I read it and I was disappointed. I guess that's the best way to put it.
I mean, hey. You say you were underwhelmed?
I was underwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because when I read it, it literally says, amidst the 55% of it being extra words, and it's only 5 pages, mind you, that all of the states that we are battling in the South I am freeing these Slavs so they can join the military. And you are not able to harm them unless in situation of self-defense. That is generally what those 5 pages said. Now, if I'm wrong, please let me know.
Questions, comments, concerns, and or corrections, email talktomsassembly@gmail.com.
And so I'm gonna send y'all the link to the actual archive that has it, and you can actually read it yourself, or you can have it transcribed. And like many of us who are more chronologically gifted, if you know how to read cursive, you can pretty much read a large portion of it. And then the transcripts, it basically says what the transcript says it says. But I was underwhelmed by it, because this piece of paper that was supposed to liberate these Slavs, all it did was free supposedly runaway Slavs. Because here's the thing, and this is something that Bones and James mentioned to me. When the southern states seceded from the Union, they had their own president. So basically what Abraham Lincoln was saying is, if you run away and don't get caught or killed and make it up here, we will grant you asylum to join the military so you can help us whip up on the people that enslaved you.
Basically.
So the Emancipation Proclamation did not free those who were not able to escape, because they couldn't enforce that. They were at war. It's like,
who imposed it on the South? When was it ever imposed? When was it ever made a law? It was just proclaimed.
Right, that's what a proclamation means. We proclaim that you are free in the event that you can get away. That's like saying, and I mean, and I say this so you can understand the seriousness of this. That's like children emancipating from their parents. Well, in order for you to be emancipated from your parents, you have to be able to get out that house and go to court, put in the paperwork. If you can't get out, then you can't get emancipated. And can't nobody enforce it unless they know you there. So that was a key point. Another thing, exactly, Compendio says proclamations, unlike executive orders, are not legally binding. And also too, Copper, if you think about it, even an executive order is only binding in the jurisdictions that is controlling. So even if it was an executive order, it wouldn't have been binding in the South until they seceded. I mean, until they signed the treaty.
And then they would have to come back and amend it to apply to the South.
Yep.
That never happened.
Okay, basically that's what's happening now, slaving until you find your way out. And so I want to, before we go digging in, and did I put in the link to the, I don't think I did. My
Yes, the archive, you put it in.
Okay. Before we go digging into that, I wanted to help us remember some of the key players in this Emancipation Proclamation. Key player number one, the one that's most important to many of us on the chat. There is nothing in that emancipation about Indians. Not one word. There is nothing in that Emancipation about Negroes. Not one word. There's nothing in that Emancipation about Métis, who were Slavs in some instances, or even the indentured servants who were used or considered to be Slavs. They said Slavs, and I say Slavs with an E because that's basically all they were. So, who did the Emancipation Proclamation free? Exactly, Pamela Hall. It was written to free those Slavs from that immigrated over here from Europe.
Bingo.
And if we do the research and do the looking, we'll find that in the late 1800s, around 1889 to 1906, there was a huge influx of Slavs. And they were working in Pennsylvania, and they were trying to get unionized. So it's not like once the Emancipation Proclamation was written and then we had the 13th Amendment, the Slavs themselves disappeared. They kept coming in droves. And then James brought something to our attention in this rising, was that many of them, because they were working in the vineyards and were dealing with wine, they started calling themselves or self-identifying as Italians. Because, from what I understand, Slavs, like Italians, you can't tell them apart unless you're one of them. Just like you couldn't tell the difference between Hugh and a Jew. David Corey says, willing to award his peasants with land grant money. So that's something we need to keep in context and keep in our minds when we're starting to talk about this Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation was only addressing the Slavs in the South who could escape and come north, join the military or not, and then fight the Confederacy. That was the whole purpose of doing that, to weaken the Confederacy Army. Was there anything else you want to talk about that before we get started?
Remember this. How else did the Union Army get that many people? Remember, we talking about a small area. How did it get all them soldiers?
Because it wasn't 13 colonies against the South. Majority of the southern states were part of the 13 colonies. Remember, if you remember the Mason-Dixon line, let's look this up. If I'm not mistaken, the Mason-Dixon line. Put this in the chat because I do not want to be incorrect when I make this statement. And we're going to show you how small the North was. It said the Mason-Dixon line, also called the Mason and Dixon line, or the Masons and Dixons line, was a survey between 1763 and 1767 by Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon in the resolution of the border dispute involving Maryland, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and colonial America. It is still a demarcation line among the U.S. states, forming part of the borders of Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, and West Virginia, part of Virginia until 1863. Later became known informally as the border between the northern United States and the southern United States before the Missouri Compromise. The line west of Delaware marked the northern limit of slavery in the United States. It is still used today in that figurative sense as a line that separates the North and the South politically and socially. So, let me share this with you. Hold on. Now, before we get started, because we're about to go deep, we're going to allow everybody to put their hard hats on. And we're going to send out this warning out there so everybody can know it's about to get... Oh, man. I didn't have the levels up like I was supposed to. Hold on. Give me a second. That should be better for everybody. I should be able to hear it's clear. Sorry about that. My apologies. So, like I was saying, we're about to give you, from now on, we're going to have a warning to let you know when we're about to get deep or if we're about to go deeper. This is courtesy of Bones and his relatives. I think y'all going to enjoy this. So, clear the blast area. Clear the blast area. Clear the blast area.
Warning, warning, warning. Hard hats, pickaxe, shovels, boots required.
Y'all heard that, right? It's a warning. So heed the warning. David Corey said without further delay. So I'm going to share my screen because I feel that this is important. So give me 1 second, good peoples. All right, it's going to be coming up shortly. All right, there it is. So this is what I read earlier about the North and the South being separate politically and socially. Grand Rising, Mr. TJ. We're about to go over the Mason-Dixon line. I put the link in the chat. So it reads, Maryland's charter of 1632 granted the Calverts land north of the entire length of the Potomac River up to the 40th parallel. A problem arose when Charles II granted a charter for Pennsylvania in 1681. The grant defined Pennsylvania's southern border as identical to Maryland's northern border, but described it differently. As Charles relied on an inaccurate map, the terms of the grant clearly indicate that Charles II and William Penn believed the 40th parallel will intersect the 12-mile circle. David Corey, he said, I had to stop because I saw what David Corey put in. He said, our voice is too deep. Free will be joining us later. She had some stuff that she had to take care of. So you got to put up with our voices for now, David. She'll be back, we promise. Where was I? Okay. It says, the terms of the grant clearly indicate that Charles II and William Penn believed the 40th parallel would intersect the 12-mile circle and Castle, Delaware, when in fact it falls north of the original boundaries of the city of Philadelphia, the site of which Penn had already selected for his colony's capital city. Negotiations ensued after the problem was discovered in 1681. A compromise proposed by Charles II in 1682, which might have resolved the issue, was undermined by Penn receiving the additional grant of the three lower counties along Delaware Bay, which later became the Delaware Colony, a satellite of Pennsylvania. Maryland considered these lands part of its original grant. See, even the land grabbers can't even agree on which land they grabbing. That's what happens when you double and triple cross people. You end up getting double or triple cross yourself. The conflict became more of an issue when settlement extended into the interior of the colonies. In 1732, the proprietary governor of the Maryland, Charles Calvert V, Baron Baltimore, signed a provisional agreement with William Penn's son, which drew a line somewhere in between and renounced the covert claim to Delaware. But later, Lord Baltimore claimed that the document he had signed did not contain the terms he had agreed to. How are you going to sign something and then say it doesn't contain the terms? It basically means you didn't read it. And he refused to put an agreement into effect. Beginning in the mid-1730s, violence erupted between settlers claiming various loyalties to Maryland and Pennsylvania. The border conflict would be known as Cresap's War. Progress was made after the Court of Chauncey ruling firmly that 1732 agreement, but the issue remained unresolved until Frederick Calvert VI, Baron Baltimore, ceased contesting the claims of Maryland's side and accepted the early agreements. Maryland's border with Delaware was to be used on Transpeninsula line and the 12-mile circle around Newcastle. The Pennsylvania-Maryland border was defined as a line of latitude 15 miles south of the northernmost house in Philadelphia, on what is today South Street. As part of the settlement, and Penn and Culver's commissioned the English team of Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon to survey the newly established boundaries between the Province of Pennsylvania, the Province of Maryland, and Delaware Colony. In 1779, Pennsylvania and Virginia agreed to extend Mason's and Dixon's line due west 5 degrees of longitude to be computed from the River Delaware for the southern boundary of the peninsula, and that a meridian drawn from the western extremity thereof to the northern limit of the said state be the western boundary of Pennsylvania forever. And after Pennsylvania abolished slavery in 1781, the western part of this line of the Ohio River became a border between slave and free states and with Delaware. So that border became the border for Slav and free states with Delaware, retaining slavery until the 13th Amendment was ratified in 1865. So does it give a better picture of it?
A lot of stuff going down in 1865. The Emancipation, 13th Amendment becomes official. Set the stage to switch places.
Timeline.
Yeah, they are very important. So if you figure, you blow this up. That's the Mason-Dixon line. So anything north of that line was considered free to Slavs that could escape. So if you were in Georgia at the time, you had to go through Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland to get to the north. And if you think about it from a population standpoint, at that time, being that there were far more people south than there were north, who had the majority of the people?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, AJ. That's far. So can you imagine? Now, granted, you could have taken, well, we're talking about Slavs. We're not talking about Indians. So they didn't own anything. They would have had to travel by other means, or they would have had to have had help. Some of these forts that our ancestors built could have been used to help.
But watch the play at hand. At the same time, you got the 13th Amendment stating slavery or involuntary servitude is illegal unless convicted of a crime. Isn't this the same time all these ridiculous laws come out for melanated people?
Exactly. So you have all these laws that are changing people's ethnicity or their social status. Because this was, we're talking about 1865, right? No, 1862 was when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, correct? When was the Trail of Tears? Well, it was signed in 62, but it was ratified in 63. The Trail of Tears happened when? It started happening in 1830, right?
Yeah.
Basically, the Indian Removal Act. All right, give me a second. I'm gonna answer the door. Grand Rising. Just in time. How you doing today, brother?
I am fantastic. This is early. I have my ascot and I'm ready to collect the rent.
Really?
Peace, James. What's up? What's up?
Just ready to collect the rent, y'all.
Greetings, gentlemen. Greetings, brother. No sellout. Glad you made it back from the baggage claim.
Yep. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Trail of Tears 1831 to 1877.
So 1831 to 1877. And then you had the Emancipation Proclamation that was signed in 1862. The Revolution, the Civil War started in what, 1860? It lasted until 1865?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, James Flames, Pamela Hall says, why you sound like you using auto-tune?
I'm sorry. Hey, I think I'm in a bad area with a signal. See that why I sound like what?
Well, we can hear you, so it's all good.
She said it sounded like you're using auto-tune.
So we're looking at this time frame between 1830, when the Indian Removal Act started, all the way to 1877, when the quote-unquote Trail of Tears ended, supposedly. So why is that important? Because there were some things that started to happen during that time, and as we remember, that we talked about the Huguenots coming in during the time of New France, before the Revolutionary War kicked off, because this was New France first. After it was New France, then they ceded the land. They being the French ceded the land to Europe, aka the Huguenots in British disguise, and the Spanish. The people didn't go anywhere though. The prostitutes that were that was the 10,000 plus prostitutes that was dumped in New Orleans and Louisiana and Canada was still here. They didn't go anywhere. All the Slavs that came here didn't go anywhere. They were still here. And all the Indians that were here were still here. They didn't go anywhere. And then you have these inconspicuous people who are mixed in that were called the Black Dutch, which was mentioned yesterday. And the Black Dutch are your Melungeons. So the interesting part about that is, if we look at the term Black Dutch, when you start looking at this 1960s and things of that nature, you still have people calling themselves Black Dutch. It doesn't take much to go from Black Dutch to black, does it? Just a thought.
No, I'll just take one word off.
Copper Indio says Aboriginals were deported from Portsmouth, Ohio at the same time, 1830.
Timelines again.
Okay. So what else is going on in 1830? Let's see what we got. So, you got the Indian Removal Act was signed by law. President Andrew Jackson. The law led the relocation of Native Americans, which became known as the Trail of Tears. June 26, 1830, King George IV of England died and William IV ascended to the throne. August 28, 1830, Peter Cooper raced his locomotive, the Tom Thumb, against a horse. The unusual experiment proved the potential of steam power and helped to inspire the building of the railroads. Then it goes on to say, American poet Emily Dickinson was born in Amherst, Massachusetts. Thanks, Copper, for
I
dropping this
remember
in.
Trail of Tears go hand in hand with the westward expansion of the railroad.
Mm-hmm. So, we have all this stuff going on, and we must keep in mind all the parties that are involved, but none of the parties are mentioned. All we hear about is Slavs, and they want us to believe and think that these were African slaves that, up until this point, had not really been talked about. If you think about the way we covered the history, there wasn't anything that mentioned Negro slaves or African slaves coming from Africa in droves up until this point that we've talked about in history. So that's why this is important, and that's the reason why we're talking about this, because it has to make sense. So let's look at 1830 and the Indian Removal Act. And this is why the Black Dutch are important and why that westward expansion happened the way that it did. So we're about to go deep. So it's time for your warning. And here it go.
Warning, warning, warning. Hard hats, pickaxe, shovels, boots required.
So let's go. So I'm going to post into chat the link to the Black Dutch. Now, for those of you who had already registered in the forum, you saw this information in here last night. So you would have had the opportunity to take a look at it and do some research. At least you would have known where we was going with this. Oh, Cliff says,
Before you go in though, you're gonna have to change the cab to the double Dutch bus this morning. It's Friday.
really? Change the cab to the double Dutch bus? This is what we doing?
The double decker.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
Oh boy. Let me go ahead and put this in the chat for everyone. So we're talking about the Black Dutch. And then if you're able to, James Bones, no sellout as you are, interrupt at any time to add anything that needs to be addressed while I'm reading this, so people can really understand what we're making reference to and why we're making this reference. Because people need to understand why this is important. So, Black Dutch is a term with several different meanings in United States dialect and slang. In general, refers to racial, ethnic, or cultural roots. Its meaning varies, and such differences are contingent upon time and space. Several varied groups of multiracial people have sometimes referred to as or identified as Black Dutch, most often as a reference to their ancestors. So there is already an attempt to make this ambiguous and confusing as possible. Just so you know. Hold on. Alright. Back in, James. Sorry about that. So they're already trying to make it seem like everybody's trying to claim Black Dutch. So it's really not that. It's not as significant as it may sound. So I'm reading the second paragraph. It goes on to read, the term Black Dutch appears to have become widely adopted in the southern highlands and as far west as Texas in the early 1800s by certain southeastern families of mixed race ancestry, especially those of Native American descent. Now remember, in the early 1700s and 15 and 1600s, when New France was here, you already had the Métis, you already had the free people of color, you already had the Anchies, which basically a franchise, which is a form of franchise. You already had these mixed people that were melanated. So let's not forget about those people, because those people did not leave once the Treaty of Paris was signed and the British, aka the Huguenot Dutch or the Huguenot French, posing as the English and British colonies, took control. These people didn't go anywhere. They just changed ownership of the land. So let's continue. When used in the South to talk about the name Black Dutch, it usually did not imply African mixture. Think about that. When the term Black Dutch is used in the South, it usually did not imply African mixture, although some families who use the terms were of triracial descent, meaning they had African near in their family. Southern Africans who were either Huguenots or of European descent. In colonial Virginia and Carolina records, the term Portuguese may have been used to refer to people of mixed race. Now, that's another term. It says Portuguese may have been used to refer to people of mixed race as well as to Sephardic Jews. Remember, could these Jews be these Germans or these Dutch? And how is it that these Portuguese were considered a mixed race people as well? And the reason why that's important is because this is in colonial Virginia and Carolina records. So if you have Métis or some form of Métis or mixed race people in your family, which we all do, and you're having a hard time finding your people, you might want to look under Portuguese or even Sephardic Jews. Because they're a mixed race. So they've already introduced two other titles that could delineate or denote of mixed race not being quote unquote white. So it goes on to read, in addition, some mixed race persons of European and African descent identified as Portuguese or Native American as a way to explain their variations in physical appearance from Europeans and to be more easily accepted by European American neighbors. Remember we was talking about how the Mohicans, or the Mohawks, and some of the Haudenosaunee tribes wanted to be accepted by their European brothers because they wanted to take on their culture, and they invited the Jesuit priests and they invited certain religious organizations onto the tribal lands to teach their children. This is still going on at this time. By the late 18th century, numerous free mixed race families were migrating west along the English neighbors to the frontiers of Virginia and North Carolina, where racial castes were less strict than in the plantation of the Tidewater, of the country of the Tidewater. So that means that caste system, to some variance from New France, had made it all the way up to the plantations country of the Tidewater area, which is my old stomping grounds. So let's look at this term Dutch. The term Dutch for people of German descent also acquired a wider meaning. So Dutch are actually people of German descent. I'm sorry, I was looking at a link that Copper sent to me. So, Dutch are people of German descent, which goes back to what Bones was talking about when it came to the Cajuns, who spoke a hard dialect. Those are the Dutch. Then it goes on to read, Anglo-Americans loosely applied the term to any dark complexion American of European descent. Dark complexion American of European descent. The term was adopted by some people as an attempt to disguise Indian or infrequently triracial descent. Now it's funny because if there weren't that many triracial people, why would there be a mass movement to adopt the term Black Dutch?
Another question. If they can relate Dutch to melanated people, what is that telling you about some of these Dutch?
That they were dark. They could have been mistaken for us, Indians. It could pass.
And why would Indians want to identify as Dutch? Could it be because Indians are getting snatched up as slaves?
Great point. Especially if you get snatched up by other tribes, right?
Could that be the link on how it was easy to get over time Indians to identify as black? By you thinking it was safer? Just a thought.
Yeah. And also too, if you think about it, wouldn't a black Dutch be the same as a black Slav?
Yep.
I'm gonna say it
because
again.
you have to remember, you had melanated French, you had melanated Huguenots.
So y'all see how we got hijacked? If you're claiming black Dutch, and that's the same thing as a black Slav, because Slavs are nothing more than a group of people from Europe. It's like saying European. So black Dutch and black Slav are interchangeable.
They would be, knowing that they come from the same land, these people.
So if you're self-identifying as black Slav or black Dutch, because it's safer at that time, that's why it talks about emancipating Slavs. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second. Clear the blast area. Clear the blast area. Clear the blast area. One time for your mind. One time for the soul. One time before we lose control. I'm done. So, if we're looking at individuals determining them to be black Dutch, aka black Slavs, now we understand why they started using that term black slaves.
And what did they say the majority of these black Dutch, these black French went? To the South and integrated in with the population? Majority of our people are where? The majority of the Indians are still where?
The South and the East. Come on now. Did y'all all get concussions when y'all get hit upside the head? So Copper dropped something in some information, and I'm gonna go ahead and read it. And it's in reference to Zwarty Pete or Pite, which is Black Peter. It's Black Pete or Black Peter. Makes a lot of Dutch references. It says the character first appears in an 1850 book by Amsterdam school teacher Jane Schenkman. Traditionally, Zwart Piet is black because he is a Moor from Spain. Those portraying Zwart Piet usually put on blackface, makeup, and colorful Renaissance attire, in addition to curly wigs and bright red lipstick. In recent years, the character has become the subject of controversy. That explains the blackface, right? So then it goes on to say, The Zwart Payet character is part of an annual feast of St. Nicholas celebrated in the evening of 5 December in the Netherlands, Aruba, and Curacao, and on 6 December in Belgium, when presents and accompanying sweets are distributed to children. The characters of Zwart Payeten appear only in the weeks before St. Nicholas' feast. First, when the saint is welcomed with the parade as he arrives in the country by boat, having traveled from Madrid, Spain. The task of Zwart Payeten are mostly to amuse children and to scatter Krurinoten. Those are sweets.
Man, why does it sound like Christmas? Oh, my bad, it is. Oops.
It says, for those who come to meet the saint as he visits schools and stores and other places. Whoa.
Christmas. But I thought I had to deal with. Never mind.
Let me put this in the chat for y'all.
Strap them hard hats down tight, please.
Let me finish reading this. Hold on. I done got so flabbergasted, I done lost my place. I done got me messed up. It says, according to Helen Adeline Goubert and others, the origin of Sinterklaas. Sinterklaas. The name is Sinterklaas, and his helpers have been linked to some of the wild hunt of Odin. Riding the white horse Sleipnir, he flew through the air as a leader of the wild hunt. He was always accompanied by two black ravens, Hugin and Munin. Hugin and Munin. These helpers would listen, just like Zwart Payet at the chimney, which was just a hole in the roof at that time, to tell Odin about the good and bad behavior of the mortals below. St. Nicholas tradition contains a number of elements that are not ecclesiastical in origin. In medieval iconography, St. Nicholas is sometimes presented as taming a chained devil who may or may not be black. However, no hint of a companion devil, servant, or any other human or human-like fixed companion to the saint is found in visual and textual sources from the Netherlands from the 16th until the 19th century. According to a long-standing theory first proposed by Carl Meissen, Zwart Payet and his equivalents in Germanic Europe originally represented such an enslaved devil forced to assist his captor. This chained and fierce-scorched devil may have re-emerged as a black human in early 19th century Netherlands in the likeness of a Moor and as a servant to Saint Nicholas. A devil as a helper of the saint can still be found in the Austrian, German, Swiss, Hungarian, Czech, Slovak, and Polish and Saint Nicholas tradition. In the character of Krampus Pierre Bautard, Shumti, Perachata, Nech, Ropea, Rubles, Hanstrap, Little Babushka, Feltzbook, Kulabov, and Bilsnickel. These companions of St. Nicholas are a group of closely related figures who accompany St. Nicholas throughout the territories formerly in the Holy Roman Empire. The characters act as a foil to the benevolent New Year gift bringer, threatening to trash or abduct disobedient children. Jacob Grimm associated this character with the pre-Christian house spirit, kobold elf, which could be benevolent or malicious. but whose mischievous side was emphasized after Christianization. The association of the New Year gift bringer has parallels in England and Scandinavian folklore, and is ultimately and remotely connected to the modern Christmas elf in American folklore. Got to be more careful.
What y'all buying for Christmas this year? Not.
Odin, all father, father of Thor. Wow.
Keep going.
Keep reading. All right. The introduction of Zwart Payet did coincide by and large with a change in the attitude of the already existing Sinterklaas character, who had been quite severe towards bad children himself, and had in fact often been presented as a boogeyman when he was still a solitary character. Moreover, some of the same terrifying characteristics that were later associated with his servant Zwart Payet were often attributed to Saint Nicholas himself. The depiction of a holy man in his light was troubling to both teachers and priests. Sometime after the introduction of Zwart Payet as Sinterklaas servant, both characters adopted a softer character. Lyrics to older traditional Sinterklaas songs, still sung today, warn that while Sinterklaas and his assistants will leave well-behaved children presents, they will punish those who have been very naughty. For example, they will take bad children and carry these children off in a burlap sack to their homeland of Spain, where, according to legend, Sinterklaas and his helper dwell out of season. These songs and stories also warn that a child who has been only slightly naughty will not get a present, but a rope, which is a bundle of birch twigs, implying that they could have gotten a birching instead, or I guess a whipping. Or they will simply receive a lump of coal instead of a gift. Well-behaved Slavs, exactly, Oak Cliff. Holy man scaring the children. So we can go into the development and depiction of the 19th and 20th centuries, and then we'll move forward unless otherwise it's suggested. In 1850, Amsterdam-based primary school teacher Jane Shinkman published the book Sint Nicholas and Jean Knecht, Saint Nicholas and his servant. The first time that a servant character is introduced in a printed version of Saint Nicholas' narrative. The servant is depicted as a page who appears as a dark person wearing clothes associated with Moors. The book also established another mythos that would become standard, the in touch or entry ceremony of Saint Nicholas and his servant, then still nameless, involving a steamboat. Shinkman has the two characters arrived from Spain, with no reference made to Nicholas historical. See Myra. Myra. And that's Nicaea of modern day Turkey. In 1850 version of Shinkman's book, the servant is depicted in simple white clothing with red piping. Starting with the second edition in 1858, the page is shown in a much more colorful page costume, reminiscent of the Spanish fashion of early days, looking much the same as he does at present. The book stayed in print until 1950 and has had considerable influence on the current celebration. Although in Shinkman's book, the servant was nameless, Joseph Albert Alderding theme already made reference to a dialogue partner of St. Nicholas with the name Peter Michnich in a handwritten note to E.J. Potgieter in 1850. Moreover, writing in 1884, Aberdeen Them remembered that in 1828 as a child, he had attended a St. Nicholas celebration in the house of Domenico Ararat, an Italian merchant and counseling living in Amsterdam. On this occasion, St. Nicholas had been accompanied by Peter Michnich, a frizzy-haired Negro in Amsterdam, who rather than a rod wore a large basket filled with presents. In 1833, an Amsterdam-based magazine made humorous references to Peter Michnich, in describing the fate that those who had sneaked out of their houses to attend that year's St. Nicholas celebrations were supposed to have met upon their return home. In 1859, Dutch newspaper De Tuge noticed that St. Nicholas nowadays was often accompanied by a Negro who, under the name of Pieter Michnich, is no less popular than the Holy Bishop himself. In the 1891 book, Hetfiets van Sinterklaas, the servant is named Pieter. Until 1920, there were several books giving him other names, and the contemporaneous appearance, the name and look still vary considerably. According to a story from Legenda Aria, retold by Eliko Verwij in his monograph, Sinterklaas, one of the miraculous deeds performed by St. Nicholas after his death considered of freeing a boy from slavery at the court of the emperor of Babylon and delivering him back to his parents. No mention is made of the boy's skin color. However, the course of 20th century narratives started to surface in which Zawit Payet was considered a former Slav who may have been freed by the saint and subsequently had become his lifelong companion. According to another popular explanation that came to prominence in the later decades of the 20th century, Zawit Payet is a Spaniard or an Italian chimney sweep, whose blackness is due to a permanent layer of soot on his body, acquired during his many trips through the chimneys. Wow. Because of ongoing controversies surrounding the character, some schools and businesses across the Netherlands have begun changing Zawit Payet's clothing and makeup, or phasing the character out entirely. In 2015, Bijikov department store chain opted to replace holiday displays featuring Zawit Payet with golden skin version instead. Elsewhere, 1 in 3 Dutch primary schools announced plans to alter the holiday broadcast instead, alter characters' appearance in their celebrations. Nickelodeon in the Netherlands also decided to use a racially mixed group of actors to portray Payet in their holiday broadcast instead of people of black face. Netherlands made a similar decision in the autumn of 2016 and replaced the characters with actors with less soot on their faces. However, in 2018, several members of a production crew refused to work on Dutch broadcast NTR's nationally televised celebration because of a decision to alter the character. Many local events still use traditional versions of Zawit Payet's singers, Jan Kringsman and Herman van Doom, along with others, had songs released which were not for profit, some in the video clips featuring several traditional Payets. Oh, Cliff Tip says, companion. Yes, companion. So let me finish reading this. Public opinion in the Netherlands and worldwide. Due to the character's depiction, which typically involves actors and volunteers covering their skin in black makeup, wearing black wigs, and large earrings, the tradition surrounding Zwarte Piet became increasingly controversial being in the beginning of the 20th century. Through a large majority of the overall population in both the Netherlands and Belgium is in favor of retaining the traditional Zwarte Piet character. Studies have shown that the perception of Zwarte Piet can differ greatly among different ethnic backgrounds, age groups, and regions. I wonder why. Outside of the Netherlands, the character has received criticism from a wide variety of international publications and news organizations, among others. American essayist David Sedaris has written about the tradition. A British comedian, Russell Brand, has spoken negatively of it, the latter dubbing Zwarte Piet a colonial hangover. Nevertheless, according to a 2013 survey, upwards of 90% of the Dutch public do not perceive Zwarte Piet to be a racist character or associate him with slavery, and are opposed to altering the character's appearance. This correlates to a 2015 study among Dutch children aged 3 to 7, which showed that they perceive Zwarte Piet to be a fantastical, clownish figure rather than a black person. However, the number of Dutch people who are willing to change certain details of the character, for example, his lips and hair, is reported to be growing. Studies show that between 80 and 80% of the Dutch public did not perceive Zwarte Piet as racial, and between 41 to 54% were happy with the character's modernized appearance. Opposition to the figure is mostly found in the most urbanized provinces of North and Southern Holland, where between 9 to 7% of the populace wants to change the appearance of Zwarte Piet. In Amsterdam, most opposition towards the character is found among Ghanaian, Antillean, and Dutch Surinamese. Surinamese communities, With 50%, the Surinamese consider the figure to be discriminatory to others, whereas 27% consider the figure to be discriminatory towards themselves. The predominance of the main anti-Zwarte Piet movements, Zwarte Piet and Zwarte Piet is racism, which have established themselves since the 2010s. Generally, adherents of those groups consider Zwarte Piet to be part of the Dutch colonial heritage, in which black people were subservient to whites or are opposed to what they consider stereotypical black sample features such as bright lips, curly hair, and large gold earrings. The public debate surrounding the figure can be described as polarized, and some Protestants considering the figure to be an insult to their ancestry, and supporters consider the character to be an inseparable part of their cultural heritage. Recent years have seen a number of incidents in which anti-Zwarte Piet demonstrators have been arrested by the police for disturbing the peace, and as well as threats being made towards prominent figures in the anti-Zwarte Piet movement by supporters of the character. Grand Rising, James Gilmore, Grand Rising, Darian Woods. Here's my question. Instead of people, and this is just my personal opinion, instead of people getting upset about the fact that these people are in blackface, why don't they ever look at why these people are in blackface? And if they're depicting that there were black Dutch or black Slavs in Holland, in the Netherlands, the question should be, how did they get there? And how long have they been there? Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Am I missing something?
No, sir. That's why I wanted you to keep reading. So now I'm going to provide further evidence, and then I'm going to slam the mic like Rakim, showing you the connection between these Issa and your Santa Claus or your Saint Nick and this Saint Peter and all these people running around in blackface. We're going to do this, as Brother Brown says, in real time. Now, I'm going to lead you to Mesoamerica, and there's a particular deity that fits this description, and he goes along and he tells, oh, wait a minute, let me do this. I'll do this. Hold on. I'll put it in the back chat, and then you can read it, and I'll be right back after these messages.
All right, so you know what that means. It's time for another warning. Here we go.
Warning, warning, warning. Hard hats, pickaxe, shovels, boots required. Warning.
All right. Thank you, Sir James. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. And it reads, make sure I start it at the beginning. Yes, it says, and it reads, another unpropitious deity. Another unpropitious deity was Ahau. Ahau. The black captain, also a war god, being represented in the picture writings as armed with a spear or an axe. It was said of him that he was a very great and very cruel warrior. He commanded a band of 7 blackamoors, Moors, like himself. He is characterized by his black color, his drooping lower lip, and the 2 curved lines at the right of his eyes. His hieroglyph is a black eye. So this is a deity that they speak of called Ahua. Hold on.
And the other portion is him by, of course, over time the names translate a little bit, but this gets into more detail of who he is and what he would do and what his helpers would do, what these 7 blackamoors would do.
Okay, so it says Ek Shuaj, also known as Ek Shua or Ek Chua or God M. According to the Gilles Zimmerman Twab classification of codical gods, is a post-classic Maya merchant deity as well as a patron of cacao. Ekjuaj is part of a pantheon of Maya deities that have been depicted in hieroglyphs and artwork of various Maya sites, and has been interpreted as a significant part of Maya religion. So then it goes on to explain Ekjuaj can either be depicted as black and white striped, as he is in the Dresden Codex, or entirely black, as he is in the Madrid Codex. Other distinguishing characteristics of Ekjuaj are his mouth, which is encircled by a red-brown border, his large lower lip, and the presence of 2 curled lines to the right of his eye. Other depictions of Ekjuaj show him as an old man with only a single tooth. This is the appearance he most regularly takes in the Madrid Codex. He has been depicted with a pack of goods commonly carried by merchants, and his carrying of a burden is also indicated by the rope or tump line tied around his head. He may also carry a spear, and in some instances, a scorpion's tail. Wow. So how's that pronounced? Ekchuash?
Yes, Ekchuash, which is this is the same meaning going back to the original Ekuahu. So it's the same deity being described. The reason why I say this is because your Germans, aka your Dutch, aka your Vikings, introduced Santa Claus, Saint Nicholas to the Americas. The British were like, no, we don't want that over here. Everybody's like, no, we don't want that over here. It was the Germans, aka your Dutch, your wood shoe wearing Dutch. They changed, as they did over there, they changed Santa Claus into a white man. Now, this is an old saying, and those that are my age, around this age, probably remember, your granny used to say, someone was long in the tooth. If someone is long in the tooth, meaning that they are wise, they're old, they're an elder. Do y'all remember that saying? They would say someone is they're long in the tooth.
Yeah, I remember.
So that's why it's representing, saying the what we would call the Ancient of Days. Same thing dealing with Santa Claus. This started over here in Mesoamerica. Remember, the Vikings came here. You don't read about that in your history books at school. The Vikings came here, and the reason why they came here is they followed the same pattern that the Issa took when they went over there. You all were the merchants that had the sack of goods. And it goes on, it talks about cacao being the chocolate. You all took chocolate over there. I'll get back to Swiss Miss Cocoa. Cocoa is from here. There's no cocoa over there. So what do the Swiss know about cocoa? You got to follow the breadcrumbs. All they did was change your Ek Oahu to Santa Claus and his black helpers. Again, what you ask when people are getting upset, oh, they in blackface. How can they do that? That's so insulting. They don't even know the reason why they do that over there. Well, the people that are over there doing the Netherlands do, but we don't, because we're so easily insulted by the fact that we see a blackface. We don't do any investigating as to why they are in blackface. It is paying homage to you, Indian. I yield the mic.
And you heard it, good peoples. Santa Claus paying homage to our ancestors, particularly my ancestors, the Issa.
May I say something? Just, and I'll be brief.
No, go ahead. You're good. You got the flow. I'm gonna mute. Go ahead. I'm gonna listen. Go ahead.
Part of the tradition of Santa Claus, Saint Nicholas, was if your children were bad, they would put a whip in your stocking and a piece of coal to whoop their butt. And that's all you got. They leaving out certain elements to let you know. And in Guatemala, they still take the bad kids before the elders and whoop their butts in the streets. They still do it today. You can look it up for yourself. Nothing has changed. So people say, oh no, I don't whoop my kids because of slavery. No, it had nothing to do with that. We were whooping our kids long before and Europeans got over here. It still goes on. So I said, when you look into traditions and find out who's what, and when you read about Odin's son, then you also read about the part of it being Admira going back to the Turks. Again, Turkey Why is it named Turkey today? It wasn't always named Turkey, but why was it called Turkey? And why do they call corn, maize, Turkish wheat? Again, they were using the corn to feed the turkeys and turkeys to fatten them up. You got to follow the breadcrumbs. We have been bamboozled. We have been hoodwinked. We have been run amok. Told you the double Dutch butch. Okay, I yield the mic. I'm out.
What do you say after that? I mean, what do you say after that? What can I say after that? If that ain't a major bomb drop, I don't know what is. So, again, because we don't ask questions, we just take what the information is presented to us and we get upset. And when I say we, I'm not talking about us on this panel or us in the chat or us in the community that know what's up because we know to ask questions. But it's just interesting that we, as a whole, get upset because the news said, in other news, over in Holland, they're wearing blackface. And no one ever asks why they're wearing blackface. And then we just go in. It's all over Facebook. But no one in Facebook's ever put this together or brought this information out so people can understand why they're doing it, because they're paying homage to us. So let's get back to these Black Dutch. Is there anything that anybody else wanted to add before I move forward?
I just wanted to throw that in because leading up to the Black Dutch, and you'll see why so many of us are what we call religious when it comes to holy days or holidays that we say are of the white man. Again, we got the remix, one being Christmas, the other one being Ishtar or Easter. So go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Fair enough. Cliff Tip says oxygen, please. And if you need to come back up, come back up. Still got work to do. So we was talking about, I'm on the Black Dutch on Wikipedia. I go ahead and place it in the back in the chat so people can keep up. And remember, these links are also on the Autochthonous Assembly.com website /forum, so that you can access this information and build on it and talk about it and, you know, share what you found. So here we go. Where we at? It says there's a strong indications. We already know they're trying to set it up for something crazy, because they already talked about the Dutch are people of descent, German descent, which acquired a wider meaning than those in those days of Deutsch, or so how to say this, Deutsch and Deutsch were the words for the Germanic languages spoken in what we now know as the Netherlands and Germany. Germans with swarthy or dark complexions were called Black Dutch, or Swoosh Dutch, or as Bones said, Seneca. According to James Pilot, who studied families claiming Black Dutch as part of their heritage. Now pay attention to this. He says, there are strong indications that the original Black Dutch were swarthy complected Germans, not Africans. Swarthy complexioned Germans. Anglo-Americans loosely applied the term to any dark-complexioned American of European descent. The term was adopted by some as an attempt to disguise Indian or frequently triracial descent by the mid-19th century. The term had become an American colloquialism, a derogatory term for anything denoting one's small stature, dark coloring, working class status, political sentiments, or anyone of foreign extract, in contrast to Anglo surnamed Melungeons. I'm going to repeat that part, just so you heard it. By the mid-19th century, the term had become an American colloquialism, a derogatory term for anything denoting one's small stature, dark coloring, working class status, political sentiments, or anyone of foreign extract. In contrast, due to Anglo surname Melungeons, nearly 60% of American families reporting Black Dutch tradition bear surnames that are either decidedly German or possibly Americanized from Germanic origin. Nearly 60% of American families reporting Black Dutch bear surnames that are either decidedly Germanic or Americanized from a Germanic origin. That's crazy. Then it goes on to read, even in the 1820s, ethnic German men who differed over politics used Black Dutch as a slur against opponents. David Coy brought up a good point. He said Ben Franklin said that Scots, Brits, and Germans all swarthy in 1750. So why do we not hear about these Black Dutch in history? Or do we?
Oh, we do. Beethoven.
I think it's even more discreet than that. Black Dutch, Black Slav, Black Slave. Could they be the same?
They are one and the same.
So, recap. Black Dutch equals Black Slav equals Black Slave. Now, why is that important? I'm going to bring this to your attention in less than 3 paragraphs. Paragraph number 1, the Melungeon. Late 20th century research by Paul Hynek found that 80% of people listed as free people of color, remember that term? In census from 1790 to 1810 in North Carolina could be traced back to what they call African Americans identified as free in Virginia in colonial times. Now, that term is not an accurate term because, one, they didn't have African Americans then, but we already knew what free people of color were called. They were your Métis. They were your Huguenots and Indians. But it says in 1790, from 1790 to 1810, in North Carolina, they could be traced back to African Americans identified as free in Virginia in colonial times. This is based on his research. He found that most such free African American families before the American Revolution were descendants from unions in working class between white women whose status made their children free by principle of partus sequentium venturum, and African men free indentured servants and slaves. Remember, African men are nothing more than those Slavs that came over from Africa. And some of those were Black Slavs. or Black Dutch. And then some of those were Huguenots that were mixed. So when we hear the term African or Black Africans, they're talking about Black Dutch. They're not talking about us. Then it goes on to read, since the late 20th century, DNA tests of people from more Melungeon families, as documented in Melungeon DNA Project, coordinated by Jack Goins, have shown most individuals are European and African descent rather than having Native American ancestry. Grand Rising Free, hope all is well with you. Everybody miss you. They don't like my voice no more. They like yours. I just thought I'd let you know that. This is a confirmation of Hynek's genealogical research, summarized in Free African Americans in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Maryland, and Delaware, 1995 to 2005, which is available for free online. Getting you with the DNA test. So, check it out. We mentioned that Black Dutch are Black Slavs, which became Black slaves. I'll say it again. Black Dutch are Black Slavs who became Black slaves. Why is this important? Because of this next paragraph in the wikipedia.org wikiblack-Dutch. It reads, Native Americans passing for white. Grand Rising Superfly. Ooh, that was a great one. She said, Superfly says, Sojourner Truth spoke Dutch. I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing. See, that's why I love our chat. Bunch of educated, beautiful peoples. So, as early as the 18th century, ethnic Germans migrated from Pennsylvania into Virginia through the Shenandoah Valley and settled in backcountry of the Appalachian Mountains, where the Melungeons were, or where they ended up being. And these Appalachian Mountain areas considered the frontier compared to Tidewater, Virginia, and the low country of the coast. They likely continued to use the term Black Dutch to refer to swarthy-skinned people, or more generally, political opponents. Historically mixed race Europeans, or your mulattoes, remember, historically race mixed European, Native American, and sometimes full-blood Native American families of South adopted the term Black Dutch. One more game. Mixed race European Native American, and sometimes full-blood American families, a full-blood Native American family, of the South adopted the term Black Dutch for their own use, and to a lesser extent, Black Irish. And this was first in Virginia, then North Carolina, and Tennessee. As the researcher Paul Hynek noted, the frontier was also the area of settlement of mixed race families of African and European ancestry who also used the terms. Okay, I gotta hit you with this warning. It's about to get deep. So hopefully y'all ready.
Warning, warning, warning. Hard hats, pickaxe, shovels, boots required.
About to go deep. Boris says, I can't believe what I'm hearing. I can't believe what I'm saying or reading. So, check this out. The practice of Cherokee and other Southeast Native American. I lost my spot. And I got so excited. Okay, the practice of Cherokee and Southeastern Native Americans identified as Black Dutch may have originated during and after the 1830s removal era. I'm going to say that again. The practice of Cherokee and other Southeast Native Americans identified as Black Dutch may have originated during and after the 1830s Indian Removal Act. They may have attempted to pass and avoid being removed to Indian territory or stigmatized by what became a majority Anglo-American society. Some Native Americans, mainly from the 5 civilized tribes of Southeast, claimed Black Dutch or Black Irish. I'm going to repeat that. Some Native Americans, mainly from the 5 civilized tribes of the Southeast, claimed Black Dutch or Black Irish heritage in order to purchase Indian land in areas which the United States treaties and other laws have reserved for people of European descent. Dawes Roll. Once they owned the land, such families who had escaped forced removal would not admit to their Native American heritage for fear of losing their property. So, hold up. Think about this. Because remember, they were moving the Indians out west. Why? Because of the gold rush, right? And there were a large number of us who didn't want to go. So if you don't want to go and you can self-identify, can't nobody tell you ain't a Black Dutch, what you gonna call yourself? Black Dutch or Black Irish. And that allows you to do what? Purchase land. But you lose your what? Your Indian heritage. So now you are not an American Indian. You are a Black Dutch, Black Irish, or a Black Slav who owns land. I'm going to say that again. If you do not want to move west, and you could claim that you had European descent and claim Black Dutch and Black Irish, well, what they going to do? Give you a blood test? Come on. You could say you Black Dutch or Black Irish, purchase land, and stay on the East Coast. So what did you give up by doing that? You gave up identifying as an American Indian because you did not want to be forced off of your land anyway. So, correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds to me like you had family members who were Indian selling their land to their family members who were claiming Black Dutch and then becoming the slaves or the Black Slavs of said landowner. so they wouldn't get sent out west. Please tell me I'm on point, I'm close, or I'm dead wrong. I'll wait.
Oh man, you just put 38 slugs, sent a mass.
So we're looking at the missing link to how we end up being duped. Well, it was a matter of survival, but in my rocking chair of comfort in my air-conditioned building, where I won't have to worry about being sent out west, I can make this stupid statement. We now understand how our ancestors were tricked into becoming black Slavs. They had no choice. It was either do that, or the majority of us will be living out west on a plantation. Now we understand why, when those Métis, who were also chiefs, moved out to those plantations, sent back that those black Slavs were no longer Indians because they gave up their right to be Indian to keep the land that they're on. Am I right, James?
Yes, sir. Because you have no right to be on a land that you can't claim. You are no longer indigenous to that land because you have claimed Black Dutch. And the quickest way to prove that you were Black Dutch is you would go to your back room, or you would have it like your granny used to on the coffee table. You'd have your Bible.
What?
That's how you were able to prove you were Black Dutch.
No.
You
Hold on.
Bible.
Say that one more time. Stop playing. Say it again. Come on.
That's how you were able to prove that you were Black Dutch. You had your Bible. So now you have so many people saying, "Oh no, why we both religious folk and why we carry around these Bibles? They won't leave those Bibles alone." That's why. Follow the trails of the Cherokee, and you'll find the Baptist trails. They are one and the same. They are synonymous. You cannot separate the two. I yield the mic.
Clear the blast area. One time for your mind. One more time for your mind. One more again. Oh, Cliff Tip said, my granny had the biggest black Bible trimmed in gold you'd ever seen. Man.
Right, and it had birth dates in there, it had christenings in there, it had marriage dates, and it had death dates.
So these were Dutch traditions?
Carrying your Bible, because again, it's the remix of our story. Because as we went over into Europe, we took our cultures, our tradition, our food, our religion, we took all of that over there with them. And of course, when you adopt a religion, you begin to tweak it, just like when you don't see European Jesus in Asian churches, you see an Asian looking Jesus, right or wrong. You adopt, just like you think of Santa Claus, Saint Nicholas, and forget about the fact that originally he was one of the deities over here in Mesoamerica. Mayan deity. They just made him white. We always talk about how they whitewash everything. So it's just your story, our story, remixed. And they put it in a book. The book that the white man has was once ours. That's a quote out of Elias Boudinot's book, A Star in the West. I yield the mic.
Okay, I need a second. Copper Color Queen says, is that why most Southern blacks claim to be Baptists? I'm half asleep, but I heard that. Okay, so Copper Color Queen. And this is not just for you, this is for everybody, including me. Because I have to get my head around this. Because I'm uncovering this and unwrapping this as I'm speaking with you. Okay? I did not know how this was going to tie in today, so give me a second. Okay, so we have the Trail of Tears, the Indian Removal Act of 1830. You have American Indians who do not want to be removed off the land. The reason why they were moving us off the land is because of the gold that was found in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and they had guessed that it was going to be in Georgia, so they wanted everybody out. And the only people that they wanted access to that land was the Europeans, their own people. So if you don't want to get removed off the land that you lived on, what do? You claim that you Black Dutch. And according to James, you show your Bible. So now you are no longer Indian. You're Black Dutch. And now you can keep your land. But by declaring yourself Black Dutch, you've also declared yourself a Black Slav. They changed the spelling of Slav in 1788 to slave. Look at the etymology. So by changing the spelling of Slav to slave in 1788, you are no longer considered a Black Slav, you're considered a Black slave. So you are either a Black slave working on a plantation as an indentured service, you are a Black slave working on your own property, you are a Black slave working on your cousins, your father's, your uncle, your sister's property. Either way, you are a self-determined Black slave after 1788 based off of the change in spelling. Because before that, you were a Black Slav, aka Black Dutch or Black Irish, aka American Indian. So when they did that's why they hurried up and did the census that year. They needed you to go on record and say that you were a Black Slav or Black Dutch. James, quick question. I've never seen, and I can only go off of the genealogy I've done for myself and the people I've ever helped. I've never seen Dutch as a census. I've never seen Dutch on a census. Did Dutch on a census exist in the 1800s? In the 1700s?
No, sir, it did not.
So how did they keep a record of the Dutch or the Slavs?
It was based upon the areas in which they lived, one, and then two, they just went on physical characteristics. But you couldn't separate the two. The one thing, and I keep talking about those wooden shoe Dutch, but the one way they were able to tell if someone was what they claimed, well, not what they were, because there's really no such thing, but that's the title that they took as a Black Dutch, whether they were Black Dutch or whether they were actually supposed to be a Slav, aka a slave, aka a Black Negro, was the shoes. If you had shoes on, again, you had your shoes, you had your Bible, you were on the land, then you were Black Dutch and you were left alone. Everybody else, if you were quote unquote a slave, you didn't have shoes because you're not going to go too far without shoes. That is the only way they could separate the two, was whether you were property or whether you were a landlord, aka a landowner, wear your shoes. And even we as knuckleheads do that today. In big cities, when they jack somebody, what do they take? Even if the shoes don't fit, they take your shoes. Dumbest thing I've ever seen. Take your shoes. I yield the mic. And I'll quote the late, great Dr. John Henry Clark when he talks about the African. And when the African came up and started coming out of the Nile Valley and headed into Europe. And then the African said it was too cold up here and they didn't have on any shoes, so they went back down into Africa. Well now, if that's the case for the African, then who were these Negroes that were all around the Netherlands? Because I don't know about anybody else, but I've done some traveling. And in the winter in Germany and all up in that, the Netherlands, Belgium, all up, it gets very cold. So I'm pretty sure that these melanated people that were in Europe had shoes and had coats. Otherwise, they would have frozen to death. And they just didn't come and stay for a couple of days when it was nice outside. They stayed and set up shop and had children. This was not, oh, let me go over here for a couple of days on a vacation and then I'll head back over to the Americas. So think about it. If Africans didn't have shoes, mind you, because they were going out in the jungle and they didn't have shoes on. So who were these melanated people all over Europe? Because you would have had to have shoes on to have been going all up into what we know as Great Britain today, the Netherlands today, Sweden today, Belgium today, Poland today, Austria, Hungary. It gets cold in that part of Europe. I yield the mic.
Wow. So El Boria made the statement, and I understand why that statement is made. It says, it seems like I'm more European than original here after hearing what I've heard today. Well, the thing you have to take into account is that because they couldn't tell the difference between Dutch, Black Dutch, and Black Indians, you could say you were Black Dutch and all you had to do was show a Bible. Remember, the Indians were given, there were many preachers and pastors here as tenants on our land handing out Bibles. So think about this. You know we always look out for one another. So if you know that there's going to be an Indian removal act, they're trying to get rid of you, and your cousin say, "Hey, I know a way that they can keep your land and don't have to be removed from the land. I know a pastor down the street that's got a Bible. All you gotta do is say that you were Black Dutch or Black Irish. Go get your Bible. Stop putting some names in there. Put you on some shoes and you straight. Or change your shoes from moccasins to Dutch shoes, and you straight." Just because your ancestors said they were Black Dutch don't mean they got European in their family, or as closely as European as they say. That was done so they can keep their land. That's what that means. So just because you find Dutch in your family, don't mean they Dutch. Mean they were Indians that didn't want to lose their property. Does that make sense? So at the end of the day, we have to understand what was at stake here. Being moved out west or losing your identity, which was basically in some cases temporary. Because you figure, well, I'll just say I'm Black Dutch. After everything settles down, I'll go back to being Indian. Well, that only worked if you didn't get into trouble. Because after that, the wars break out. Now you have all these black Slavs on this land, buying up land, owning land, and then you have these Acadian, aka Cajuns, causing problems. Then you have the KKK. Then the Civil War. Well, the Civil War, then the KKK. So now you're looking at losing your land, because now, in some instances, some people are being abducted and becoming Slavs on somebody else's property. You're not Indian anymore. You are a black Slav. And after 1788, you became a black slave. And you can't claim Indian heritage, because either you are a black slave on land that you purchased, or you are an Indian that's getting removed. Which one is it? So you got to make a choice. So that's when all these crazy laws came out, to where they're going to make you commit crimes, because the 13th Amendment doesn't say what type of crimes. It says a crime. Who dictates the laws? The state, right? The county. Jaywalking, trespassing, hanging out. Now you've committed a crime, so now you are what? Incarcerated. So now you are a black slave that's incarcerated. So now they put you into a slave system, because you are no longer an Indian. And now they do what? Now they take your land. Because now you owe, because you got to pay your penance. So now you have all these situations coming about, and there's this war. And then there's an Emancipation Proclamation sign that says all Slavs who escape and make it to north of the Mason-Dixon line in Pennsylvania, or Delaware, excuse me, you get to come up here and live as free Slavs, or free Black Dutch. And if you choose to join the military and fight those people that took your land. And then hopefully you'll be able to get your land back when you go back down there. But you gotta remember, there's people squatting on the land, because now there's squatters' rights. So there's a whole big mix-up and a big bunch of confusion as to who owns what. All because we changed our name. We self-identified. And we've been self-identified, self-identifying since. So
I'll give you a prime example. This is a Jedi mind trick question. This gets, again, on my maternal side, is Dr. Lacey Kirk Williams. Now, just a simple question. Y'all don't think too much. His name was Lacey Kirk, or you'll find it L.K. Williams. Now, what would you think his father's surname was?
Williams.
You would think so. It was Shorter.
What?
Which is a Huguenot, aka Jewish, aka Black Slav name, and we are on that side, or Alabama Kushata. He took on a name, this Black Dutch name, to stay in the land. And he had his trusty book, aka the Bible. And as soon as the Civil War was over, He changed the last name to Williams.
So he
They
changed
didn't
his
have
name.
last names.
So he changed his names from he took on a last name, or shorter. Then he changed it to Williams after the Civil War.
Yes, sir. As you discovered before in Yafula, and saw that the shorter plantation wasn't built until the turn of the century, going into the 1900s.
Yep, 1901. It was finished in 1906. Yep.
Exactly. He grew up on that land, shorter land, but he was not a slave. He could read and write. So it's amazing that he changed the name and then turned around and as soon as the Civil War was over, changed his surname from Shorter to Williams, packed the family up, and they moved to Texas.
So basically what you're telling me is that our ancestors didn't have surnames. We didn't start getting surnames until we didn't want to be removed.
Exactly. And because of his knowledge of that book, which was remixed and remastered and given back to us, he became one of the leaders in the National Baptist Convention, which was what you would classify as white and black people or Negroes. And his son, Dr. Lacey Kirk Williams, became president of the National Baptist Convention. That's how I know so much about it, because I have the books and the documentation to show it.
That explains everything from this perspective. So up until they started talking about removing us and we knew it was serious, we didn't use last names or surnames. Surnames are something that they had. The Europeans. Am I understanding correctly? James?
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't get your question. I didn't hear you.
I said, so being that our ancestors didn't have surnames, surnames was a European concept. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, sir. Because all you were dealing with your surname was what you did or the area in which you resided. That's all it was. It was like, I would be James of Doodlesville, thus spawned Doodle Vision.
Okay, so that explains it. So, to protect our families, we took on surname. We grabbed a Bible. We claimed Dutch, Black Dutch, or Black Irish. And we made sure we didn't have on no moccasins, but we wore Dutch shoes. El boy, I'm with you. This is life changing because it answers a lot of questions. It shuts down a lot of myths and inaccuracies. It helps us understand how we got put into this position or how we allowed ourselves to be placed in this position because we were being nice and accommodating as a people. So, on behalf of the East, I apologize. Because we started this mess. I mean, this hard hat is cracked. And I don't know if and I think my head is swollen, so I don't know if I could be able to get another hard hat on tomorrow. This is truly, 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 truly Crazy.
There's also further proof on how they they'll keep showing you they want to keep the myth going, which is why I didn't mean for us to deviate there, but explaining the religious or cultural ceremonies that they would do involving Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas, is that they brought the people over here, and you will come to discover the swarthy people, again, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and what is he? Austrian, Austrian-Hungary are the same as the Germans. They're the same people, but they will tell you because Austria means people of the East. How did they get swarthy? How did they get dark skinned? See, this is what you got to ask. Who were the people they were having babies with to become swarthy? And that's why I say again, these were not African cultures. Santa Claus, Saint Nicholas, and his helpers, as we just read about Ahua and his 7 blackamoors, helpers that were with him, that he was the Lord of the merchants, and he would bring with him a big sack of goods. Sound like Santa Claus to me?
So
and they changed those blackamoor helpers to reindeer. I yield the mic.
So James, so people in the chat, it opened what we discovered today. It helps a lot, but it also makes some people more confused from the standpoint of now when it comes to these last names. When we start coming across these issues with last names, what is it? What can we do to help? What can we do to help these individuals? Because again, the example you gave, one of your ancestors' last name, he took on the name shorter because he wanted to become identified as a Black Dutch, so that he wouldn't be identified as an Indian and moved out west, end up being a Black Slav and a Black slave, and then he changed his name to Williams from shorter. So he just chose a last name. So when individuals are having problems with their ancestors' last names, or they're getting stuck because not only the spelling and things of that nature, what are some of the things that they can do?
One of the things that I would advise is do compare and contrast. That was one of the type of essays that we had to write in college or at the bastions of higher learning. They make you do, several types of essays, and that was one, compare and contrast. Is now, let's say, for example, if you have a John Smith, and then you see, okay, now we have a John Long. They live in the same area, same county, and their children have the same names. What would be the odds of that? That's the number one thing that you want to look at. You'll start looking and saying, okay, well, what are the odds that John Smith's wife is named Mary, John Long's wife is named Mary, and all of their kids, Sally, Ruth, Sue, Jack, all of them have the same name, and they live in the same house on the same block or the same ward. As you see down south, they call them wards, police wards. They live in the same counties, the same precinct. So follow those breadcrumbs. That's the best advice that I could give anyone. Don't get caught up so much in the names or the spelling of the names, because we know that changed.
Okay. Excuse me, but it does shed a light onto why our last names changed so much, because they weren't our last names.
Right. It meant nothing to us. And if you know, like for on my mom's side too, but on my dad's side, same deal. Is someone in the family is named after someone in the previous generation. the first name, and that's how we were able to know. It's like, okay, this person, that person, this person, that person, all the way down the line, and it would be odd names. Like, for example, I have a cousin named Omi, but why is she named Omi? She's named Omi because it's a variation of Ami. So we go back, we find Amis, and then we find Omis again, all within that line, because they kept naming their children and their children's children, dealing with their first name. So you'll find that a lot, that the first name of who you are. Now you may see different spellings, whether it's the Old English, which we know would be the Dutch spelling, or the Spanish spelling, or whatever the case may be. Because, like, for example, I have, a great grandfather several times removed that you will see him as John, and he's listed in the book as John. He was one of the chiefs of the Chata. But then when you're reading in Spanish text, he's Juan. Same person, John is Juan. So you'll find that a lot too. So like I say, don't get caught up in the names or the spelling of the names, but just keep following the breadcrumbs, and then ask yourself questions. Especially I know all of us have someone in our family that's named, that has a weird name. We go to find out, oh, well, your great granny was named that. That's why you were named that. So it was to keep that going, to know who you were. I yield the mic.
It's interesting that you say that, because I have my mother's uncle. His name is Hiawatha, and he was the only one out of all my grandmother's brothers and sisters that has that name. And I always thought that was a little odd that he would have that name, and everybody else's name was Europeanized. So that makes a lot of sense now. So, wow. I hope everybody in the chat, all right. Cliff says TX Anna didn't speak English. Now I'm thinking she spoke Dutch. It's possible, Oak Cliff Tiff. It's so the good news is it's starting to help us understand why things happen the way they happen, why the last names happen the way they happen, and why we are coming across some of the challenges. All because of this Indian Removal Act. So let me go ahead and finish reading this part, and then we're gonna close out. So then it goes on to read, because it's talking about the Cherokee in the local area after the Indian Removal Act. And it goes on to say that they denied their ancestry and basically lived much of their lives in fear of being sent west. Full-bloods claimed to be Black Irish or Black Dutch, thus denying their rightful Native American blood. After being fully assimilated into the general population years later, these Irish Cherokee mixed blood descendants began reclaiming their Native American heritage, and in the land of the Warrior Mountains, Lawrence County, Alabama. During the 1900 U.S. Census, only 78 people claimed their Native American heritage. In 1990, more than 2,000 individuals claimed Native American descent. Today, more than 4,000 citizens are proud to claim their Native American heritage and are members of the Echota Cherokee tribe. So let's look at the Black Dutch in the Midwest and Deep South. It says, over time, the term Black Dutch migrated within certain families or mixed ancestry from North Carolina, Kentucky, and Tennessee to Missouri and Arkansas, as well as the Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, and Oklahoma, where its original meaning became lost. Many people born in the 20th century have claimed Black Dutch heritage, sometimes in addition to Native heritage, without having any idea how their Black Dutch ancestors were supposed to be, or who their Black Dutch ancestors were supposed to be. Unlike families in Pennsylvania or Virginia, Most of the mixed-race Black Dutch families of the Deep South have English or Scot-Irish surnames and have no German ancestry in their families. So, again, when you're looking at your census, look at the similarities in the names of the father, the mother, and the children. If all the names are the same and they're living in the same county, in the same area, 10 years later, chances are it's the same people, just the names have changed.
I kind of had a chance to glance over the chat too. I don't want people to think because we're having a discussion about Black Dutch. I want to reiterate it. I know Brother Thomas had touched on it. I want to hammer it home too. That does not mean that your people are European.
Exactly.
That just means that they took the name. That's all that means, that they took the name. Because I saw people like, oh man, I can't believe it. No, that does not mean that does not mean that you're German. It does not mean that you're Dutch. It does not mean that you're French. It just simply means that they took the names in order to stay in the land. As I was saying a few months ago, that there were 3 different groups of people that you have to understand that what things happened that took place. Those that went along with the Trail of Tears and they left and went west. You had those that decided that, hey, I am going to stay in this land. And then you had those that got, quote unquote, became slaves. So you had those 3 different groups that are there that you will find probably, especially if you're in the Gulf Coast region, you will find a branch of your family fall into those 3 categories. So you had those that wanted to remain in the land, that did not change their name, did not want to conform, that when the surveyors came and put stakes in the ground, now you're in Johnson County. Well, guess what? If Mr. Will Johnson owns that county, quote unquote, then you are a slave of Will Johnson and you've gone nowhere. You're still on your land, and now you are a quote unquote sharecropper. So you are a slave. Wasn't no getting out whipping you and all this stuff and putting you in shackles and stocks and all that. It was the fact of, hey, we've always been on this land. I didn't know that's why the people never left. You think it would have, if slavery was the way it has been given, do you honestly think, because this is something that deals with the psyche, do you know how much of a coward our ancestors would have to be to just lay down and allow someone to come into your house and hold you hostage like that? Think about it. I mean, honestly, because in most of the cases, when you read about people being kidnapped and enslaved, you'll find that they were small children. These were not adults that they were taking, and they weren't taking them by the hundreds nor by the thousands. There is no way. Like I said, can you imagine you reading these stories in school as a child and saying, man, I had to come from a long line of cowards that have no backbones. So I don't want anybody to leave today's show thinking that your people were cowards. That wasn't the case. They wanted to remain in the land. And so when you took on that Black Dutch name, guess what you became? A citizen.
And
which we had already talked about before. Right. Now you are a citizen. I yield the mic.
And in becoming a citizen, now you are taxable. So you purchase land, right? Not as an Indian who was non-taxed. You purchased the land as a Slav who was an immigrant that came over here and owes taxes on land that does not belong to them originally. So now you got to pay tax. So because you don't have the money to pay taxes up front, you are a sharecropper in Johnson County paying tax to Johnson County, which means you are a Black slave on this plantation. That's a sharecropper. Only because you owe money. And if you didn't pay that tax, you did what? You committed a crime, and now you're going to jail, and they take your land. Am I close, James?
Yes, sir. And you own it even today. You can own your land But go ahead and decide that you're not going to pay taxes on that land and see what happens. Good luck to you. And you could have owned it. It could have been in your family for 100 years. But don't decide that, hey, this is my land and I'm not paying taxes. See what happens to you. Let me know how that goes. Good luck to you. I can tell you how it's going to turn out, or you can find out for yourself. But good luck.
Ladarian was asked the questions of could you also be considered a Moor? You have to realize what that means. Moor was a descriptive term given to my ancestors by the Spanish because of their comparison to the Moors in Spain that were Muslims and the way they dress and the way they carry themselves. Only by complexion. It has nothing to do with a group of people. Majority of your Moors that they're talking about were Muslims. So when the Spaniards came here, I'm sorry, go ahead, James.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
So when the Spaniards came here in South America and saw our ancestors, they thought they were Moors. And when they saw our pyramids and our buildings, they thought they were mosques. Because that was the only thing that they could compare them to. They had no other comparison. So they thought they were Moors. And when they saw us on our ships coming to different parts of the country, they thought we were Moors. Because the only people that they had been exposed to were the Moors that were Muslims. Am I correct, James?
Yes, sir. Because the majority of those that came over, your Issa dealt with lands that were dominated by the Moors on the ships. Why, as mentioned earlier, and you hear it all the time, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. When you're dealing with Moors, and at the end of the day, Moor is not even dealing with, and people try to use Islam and Moor synonymously, and that's not always the case. You get more, like you said earlier, it's just dealing with the hue of your skin, you being melanated. And at the end of the day, Moor just breaks down, it just means beloved. That's it. It has nothing to do with your religion, your culture, any of that. So all they were saying, beloved by who? Beloved of God. Indios, same thing, same people. And those of the Gulf Coast had turbans, wore turbans, just like those that you quote unquote call the Moors over in Europe, with a feather in it. The best example I could give is Noble Drew Ali. Everyone laughs at the way he was dressed, but his headgear was dead on, because that's what the Indians of the Southeast along the Gulf, that is what they wore. That was their headdress. They wore turbans. I yield the mic.
Exactly. Turbans. Indians weren't the only people that wore turbans, especially the ones in the South. So if you wear turbans with a feather, then you definitely think somebody was a Moor, based off the way you look at them. And then, again, also to the East, were all over. We weren't land dwellers. We had boats, ships. We traveled. So it's a comparison. So remember, when our ancestors had a decision when it came time to be moved off their land. Decision number one, go out west to the Trail of Tears. Get your land. Either you either on a reservation or you're off the reservation, and you help build the Negro Wall Street. Or you stay here as an Indian, get harassed and fight to become and stay an Indian. Or you like, you know what, that's too much trouble. I'm just going to say I'm Black Dutch. Give me some shoes that are wooden. Give me a Bible. Get a surname. And then I'm done. But you got to remember, regardless of what your ancestor did, you did not self-identify from the standpoint of enumeration. The enumerators were still in control of what they labeled you as. We didn't have the right to physically self-identify on paper till 1970. This is still the late 1800s. So in many cases, it didn't matter what your ancestors put down on paper or said. Something else got put in the census, which causes another problem. So all this stuff has to be taken into consideration. Just because your ancestors claim that they were Black Dutch or Black Irish does not mean that you have European in your family. That means they wanted to stay on the East Coast or the Southeast so they can keep their land, and they went from being Indians on land that they own not taxed to Black Dutch on a land that they owned that was taxed. So they end up becoming sharecroppers. And you know what happens when you don't pay your taxes? And remember, they didn't have any rights then either, because now they were Black Slavs. It's a whole nother story. Oh boy. I think this is enough for today. Everybody make sure you turn in your RS, your pickaxes and everything to human resources before we head out. If they broke up, put them in a trash can. So James, before we head out and let these good people do what they do, can you bless us with some more information before you head out, before we go?
Just wanted to say that everything that we have been taught to hate, you may need to investigate. And no, I'm not trying to be Jesse Jackson. I wasn't trying to rhyme, but if that helps you to remember, then remember it. Though that we've been taught to hate, let's investigate. So we learned today about these Black Dutch, so-called Black Dutch, and who they were, why these names were changing. Because I've heard that a lot dealing with genealogy. You hear it's like, oh man, such and such, such and such, and then I get here, and then I get stuck, and I can't find them. And they say, well, then my granny's name changed, but she didn't remarry. This is why the names were changing. So they could keep the land. It was about keeping the land. Because our ancestors knew that your land ties you back to who you are. Because if not, then you just running around from pillar to post. And now you're colored, Negro, Black, African American. You have no home. You are a nomad. And we were never nomadic people. We always had a home. So this is what we have to get back to and understand. And I'll say again, those that are claiming that everyone is a Moor is not the case. And when I say that is because they're saying more from a religious, from an Islamic standpoint. And hopefully here, not into the too distant future, I'll show you the connection on Islam, again, being over here and being over there, and how the two intertwine. Oh, I wanted to say this, and I am going to yield the mic. There's a reason why certain languages are called the Romantic languages. Your French, Spanish, aka Latin, Ladino, to show you that this was an ethnic cleansing, whether it was Yugoslavia. Remember, some of you may have been old enough to remember in the 80s, late 80s and 90s, there was an ethnic cleansing, and it was like, oh, save the Yugoslavian, save them. There were two different groups of people. You had your Huguenots and your Slavs. You had the Czechoslovakia. You had your Czechs and you had your Slavs. This was an ethnic cleansing, but this started in Germany. They don't tell you, and this is what really is going to blow your mind. People, they talk about, the Jews, and they went to the concentration camps. Hitler started with the Romani. If you look up the Romani, and you will discover that these were ethnic people that he was cleansing. Europe was about getting rid of all the melanated people. And to us, you would look and say, oh, those are all white people. But they can tell themselves apart, just like the Hutu and totally slipped my mind now. In West Africa, they have an issue with the Tutsi. So those are two different groups of people that on the outside, people say, oh, they're all Africans. No, they're not. They're two different groups of people. And they know they're two different groups of people. Just like if you get a Czech, which is basically your Polish, your Polak, and you get a Slav, and you will be able to, they can tell the difference. And if you're over there long enough, you'll be able to tell the difference. And again, that's why these people, even there, they'll call Romani. They didn't call themselves gypsies. Americans started calling them gypsies and calling them gypsies over here. Then you'll discover the customs on what they did over there and the customs that we were already doing over here. That's why they couldn't separate the two or distinguish the two. And I'll tell you about the shoes. Those wooden shoes became known as Weejuns. Weejun. You know them better today as penny loafers. But back in the day, my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother and my great-great-grandfather would call them going to church shoes, going to meeting shoes. They didn't have shoestrings back then. Remember, they just said you just had to slide on shoes, penny loafers. Those wooden shoe Dutch. So when they would come to your door and they say, oh, who are you? They look down, they see you had shoes. You had your penny loafers. You're coming to meeting shoes. You had your Bible. And then you wrote down your name on the census. Black Dutch. Are you this cotton picking Mike?
Okay. I'm sorry, I was supposed to let no sellout go first. My bad, no sellout. I'm sorry. Is there anything you want to share before we let these good people go?
You know what it is. Links in the chat. Any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections, email us at octoptionsassembly@gmail.com. Log on to the forum. I'll leave that alone. Just check out the website. Y'all have a blessed day.
Yeah, we're gonna be you'll be able to continue this conversation on the forum at talkthisassembly.com/forum, and then you'll see the subject in the chat. You'll also be able to comment, get your questions answered. We'll be in and out the chat throughout the day. I might have a couple of appointments, but I'll be out there, so we can help you, especially with what this information that's been dropped. I'm sure some of us need to decompress a little bit. I know I do. So I'll be accessible on the chat later on this afternoon. But just don't forget to register, sign in, so we can help you not only sort out this information, but also take a deeper look at your family tree, and hopefully it makes a lot more sense as to why the names have been changing. I mean, I think we've tied a lot of loose ends up today when it comes to this whole slavery thing. So with that, I'm going to let Bones take us out. Yeah, Bones, what you got for us?
Made it back in time to be able to say, wow. Because, you know, we've been reading about it already and researching it already, but it's still wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, bro. Yeah. That's all I got. I mean, you can take us out, Bones. You can take us out. I'm done.
So on that note, It's always fun when we get to kick it with the relatives. There's no place we'd rather be. And until the next show, make sure I have them hard hats prepared. Never know what turns we're going to go. Everyone have a very, very blissful day. And peace.